Right now, it's got a higher multiple than NVIDIA.
Well, NVIDIA...
I would think NVIDIA has a bit of a higher growth rate.
Well, let's see what happens when Jensen Huang meets with President Trump today.
Yeah. I don't know that that's going to change the growth rate of NVIDIA, but...
Well,
okay.
I mean, maybe they're going to get rid of the friend, not friend rules that Biden put in at the last hour, where there was no consultation whatsoever with Jensen Huang, who by the way, is one of America's greatest companies. But you don't like on a Saturday night do that.
No, although the response to DeepSeek has been interesting. Some say actually it's a sign that we should be even tighter on the chip supply as opposed to...
Well, in fact, and there's some wire stories this morning about some pressing the White House to be tougher, at least on NVIDIA.
There are. I think that the White House is actually a little less hard line than people think. I think that the White House wants to hear. The White House is trying to figure out, did DeepSeek get 100,000 high-end chips from Singapore
or wherever?
And I posted yesterday on X, absolutely not. That there's just no evidence whatsoever, according to NVIDIA, that they diverted them from Singapore. I think they're in a jam. If they say, look, the reason why DeepSeek really, they had access to 100,000, it's not like they made, okay, I got an analogy for you. All right, so you have a juicer that can make 10 glasses of orange juice out of an apple, of an orange.
An apple?
That's what Jensen's doing. No, wow. 10 glasses, that's a mistake. They can make 10 glasses of orange juice out of one.
Okay.
Or you can make, you have 10 juicers, and you just get one glass. So do you really need to pay for 10 juicers? You can just buy DeepSeek's.
Understood. Right.
And that's the worry.
That is the worry. Listen, I think there any number of people now have weighed in saying the efficiencies they were able to come up with, the techniques they used, whether it's reinforcement learning or this mixture of experts, things are certainly our software engineers are well aware of and have used, but that they did a good job and that they did plow new ground. That said, they also a lot of people have weighed in now on the cost differential and saying it really isn't that large between the models here and the model, what they were able to do. And ultimately, I think many believe that chip demand will be unchanged.
I agree. Well, okay, so here's...
Over any meaningful period of time, but we'll see. Now, on the chip front, I mean, again, Darius Amodei, the guy who runs Anthropic, came out with a piece, I think it was earlier this week, I read it, saying we got to be even tougher on China. Well, we cannot let them be our equal. And that's another thing that we do understand from DeepSeek.
Although Jassie's post last night, DeepSeek R1 now available on AWS.
Unbelievable. I'm most closely concerned that when Amazon reports, they say, you know what, we are going to slow NVIDIA, or we're going to go to AMD, which they're not using for this kind of thing. I think they're going to stay with their friendly relationship with Jensen, but that's what the bears are telling me. Okay, so here's uses that DeepSeek can't do, okay, that you can do on Blackwell, all right? Multimodal memory, spatial intelligence, physical actuation, vision, and touch. So those are the things that you need Blackwell for. That's
all robotics, right?
Well, yes, but that matters tremendously.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to do it for that.
Right.
Unless they get the highest end chips.
Right. So, I mean, look, you want it to play Jeopardy. I don't want it to be, it plays a great game of checkers, but NVIDIA is a grandmaster. Kasparov.
In chess, not checkers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chess.
Yes,
Grandmaster.
Yes.
That's who NVIDIA is, grandmaster. And the president is going to like him, and I think they're going to come out, and he's going to say whatever is good for NVIDIA is good for America. This is why I like NVIDIA. It's a recognition that it is a new industrial revolution. Anybody who's in it is worth a lot more than the people that aren't. Look, I'm sure that when they discovered the cotton gin and you're a weaver, you're saying, you know what, that's ridiculous. What?
Oh, no, I'm not making faces.
Oh, the cotton gin?
I'm making faces at our executive producer. I don't limit my faces just to you.
The steam engine, remember the steam engine? Or are you still like in the wheel and the pulley? You in the wedge? You're in the wedge.
Robert Fulton, who invented
He's shocked
All
at the
I know
wedge.
is Eli Whitney and the cotton gin.
Eli Whitney is cotton gin. Robert Fulton was the steam engine? Is that right?
Good.
He's buried right here. I walk by him all the time.
Who's buried in Grant's tomb?
Grant?
There you go.
Jim mentions this meeting with the White House and NVIDIA today. For more on that, let's get to our Seema Modi. Hey, Seema.
Hey, Carl, we can confirm per sources familiar that NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang will be meeting with President Trump today at the White House sometime this afternoon. The meeting was set up a couple weeks ago. The goal really being for these two leaders to get to know one another. Topics we are told are going to be including AI policy generally, not related specifically to DeepSeek, but I was told no doubt DeepSeek will come up in the discussion around U.S. restrictions on chip sales to China, which of course is one of the big open questions following the DeepSeek revelations and this Chinese app being able to run on older, cheaper NVIDIA GPUs. The other topic up for discussion is the onshoring of chip production in the U.S. at a time where U.S. chip makers, as we know, are heavily reliant on Taiwan, guys. So we are watching shares of NVIDIA here in pre-market trade.
Today, but we are focusing to start here on NVIDIA's no good, very bad week, because that's what it's been. In fact, there is the stock week to date. It is down some 12%. It is the worst week since last September. You can call it the DeepSeek sink. On those headlines about that Chinese AI competitor. Headlines like the ones we're showing you on your screen right now. As a matter of fact, NVIDIA faces a reckoning. Trump considers restricting NVIDIA sales to China. Biggest one-day market cap loss in history. It's reeling. It's in danger of losing its monopoly-like margins. Jimmy, I called you Jimmy Jitters yesterday on the air because you said you were trimming NVIDIA. Maybe the market itself is pretty jittery today. Wolf says NVIDIA is struggling to show upward momentum. The stock's tried to get something going a little bit, a couple of times, and it really hasn't been able to do it.
You know, I don't think it's necessarily, Scott, that the market has jitters, but I think a sector of the market has jitters, and that's the AI sector. When I say the AI sector, I mean that portion of AI that has led for the last 2 years, the big cap techs, Microsoft, NVIDIA. And I think it's reasonable. Now, I want to quickly point out that I trimmed. I didn't sell all of my NVIDIA. I do think that what this news means is that in the year 2026, and I know we're only January 2025, that maybe those out years, 2026 and beyond, the projections for growth in revenue and earnings might have to come down a little bit. Now, the reason I'm being that specific is because we did get news from Microsoft, from Meta this week, that indicates that their CapEx in the near term is not slowing down. So this is not a 2025 issue, but I think that we've seen that DeepSeek, regardless of whether it's glomming onto OpenAI, regardless of whether it's intellectual property theft, it is showing that maybe you don't need to have as much capital expenditures as is currently going on. And again, that will speak to 2026 and beyond. As far as, Jimmy Jitters, and I actually thought it was hilarious, Scott, when you did it yesterday, I'm just going to recharacterize myself as Jimmy, the prudent risk manager. These stocks, I don't care whether it's NVIDIA, Oracle, or any of them, have gone up so much that taking a little bit off the table while still retaining some for future growth, I think it's just prudent risk management. To summarize, I'm not sounding an alarm bell here like everybody needs to head for the hills. I am saying it is time to reevaluate risk.
No, but I mean, look, there are, as we showed you in the wall, and we can put it back up for you again, that the DeepSeek rise, journal headline, exposes NVIDIA's weakness. NVIDIA in danger, according to The Economist in their headline, of losing its monopoly-like margins. Rob, it feels like, and many are suggesting that the goalposts have in fact moved this week, that the narrative has at least changed somewhat. You own NVIDIA. You feel like doing anything with your stock?
If anything, I'm getting an echo here, Scott. Sorry. Getting some feedback. I hear myself. Can we come back to me?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry about that.
It's not, yeah.
It's gone. It's gone. It left.
Okay,
I can come in. I apologize for that. I was hearing myself speak. But anyway, listen, if you call him Jimmy Jitters, you can call me Robbie the Opportunist in the New Edge side of things, because we expected this volatility from these type of extended price points, and we've seen a lot of it. We did some trading around TSMC as well when we saw the sell-off. So we are underweight NVIDIA, but we continue to look for opportunities to buy more of the stock. Longer term, it'd be imprudent, as Jim says, to ignore the risk of inefficient computing power on their overall growth. However, the company continues to have dominant market share. They have a strong moat supported by a developer-friendly ecosystem. We've been a disciplined buyer of this name. We're roughly 50% the weight of the index. And the reality of it is, if you buy at these levels, when you have these recalibrations, it provides a margin of safety in what is still a very cyclical business. There's no doubt that more efficient compute can be an issue. But as Jim said, none of the CapEx from the hyperscalers looks like it's coming in meaningfully, and we still think that NVIDIA is going to be the strongest beneficiary of that. And remember, we're up in the recent purchases we made.
So let's bring in Steve Weiss, who joins us now on the phone, because he, in fact, has bought more NVIDIA today. Tell me why today was the day to do that, given the headlines that we showed our viewers from that wall, the questions that are still out there, the fact that this stock has tried to bounce rather unsuccessfully.
So that's all correct. And basically, I agree with everything that Rob said, including, by the way, his aversion to hearing him talk. But the reason I bought it is the headlines today, in part. And it's been a pretty successful strategy with Taiwan Semi, with Netflix, with United Healthcare on high-quality permanent compounders to buy the dip. And so what we've seen this week is a lot of frightened holders who perhaps didn't know what they owned, bought the momentum, exiting the stock. So, look, I don't know what happens with the meeting of Jensen and Trump. Nobody does. But I can tell you, anybody that's ever met with Trump recently has come out with Trump on their side and supportive of them. So you will come to a situation, of course, with DeepSeek where tech lines up on two sides. You've got the Metas of the world who really want to drive down costs. Yet they said that they're not revising their budget. Nobody should in this. So you're going to win from that with NVIDIA. Now, it's not news that NVIDIA's margins are going to come under pressure. That, in fact, is Moore's Law. The only news is that it may be happening sooner than later, but they will continue to innovate. So right now, I'm buying the panic selling in that. I also bought the panic selling in Taiwan Semi. I also bought smaller, because it wasn't really a big decline, on Microsoft as well yesterday. So I just take those opportunities for what I believe is still going to be a great AI CapEx cycle for technology. The difference being, at least for now, you have to be more selective. So each of those have an idiosyncratic bull case to them versus the broader range that don't. So that's why I bought those and topped them up today.
Look, I think the problem is you can never pretend that you know when you don't know. And it's always gutsy to come out and say, listen, I don't know. I mean, look, right now, Jensen Huang's with the president. I would like to hear what he has to say. We need, if you're long this stock, you need to hear that the president wants to undo what Biden did right at the end, which is to say, listen, we're only going to let them sell a lot to 18 friendly countries, of which, by the way, they left off some major countries like Israel, which is supposed to be a friend as far as I know. I listened to Alex Karp earlier. I would say definitely. But lots of other countries that are in the EU. So we need to hear that reversed. You need to hear that the president doesn't fear that chips are going to go to China of the lower level. Remember, they were giving lesser chips to China, and that NVIDIA has been able to convince him that there is no backdoor from Singapore. There isn't, because I think that they are able to account for all those. So let's go back to, and by the way, I know that Jensen Huang hates Moore's Law, thinks it's dead. But I think the biggest issue is we got through the hurdle of Meta saying they need it. We know that Oracle needs it without a problem. We absolutely got that. We know that Apple wants anything it can get, and they're a free rider. They'll be good. But we know that Microsoft needs more. But what we don't know is Amazon. And next week, Amazon, what happens if Amazon says, it plays hardball and says, you know what, we don't need as many? Then you have this plummet, and I am concerned about that. Otherwise, look, I think that DeepSeek's playing checkers, and these guys are playing grandmaster chess. And just so you know, you cannot use. By the way, the reliability of DeepSeek is ridiculous. I don't know why anyone thinks it's any good. We were doing some stuff putting in Winston 1984, and first it was talking about how he was told to dissemble in favor of the government, and then it took that right away. But I will say, look, what can DeepSeek not do that Jensen knows that NVIDIA can do? Multimodal memory, spatial intelligence, physical actuators, vision, and touch. So you can't use it for robots, and you can't use it for self-drive. So what the hell good is it? So anyway, it's good and bad. But boy, do I ever want to hear from Amazon. I want to hear from Google, too, before I just say, hey, you know what? We're home free.
So is it then overstating it to say that they have NVIDIA, being the they, have gone from in the driver's seat to on the defensive? I suppose both can be true. I mean, they are still in the driver's seat. Look, we didn't even mention OpenAI, the fact that they're doing this huge raise at such an incredible valuation. Where are they going to go with the money to buy what they need? Probably NVIDIA.
Right. Well, absolutely. You go to NVIDIA. I think that, and I used to work very close with Stephanie, and we would say, well, you know, when someone doesn't have anything to say, you can't necessarily attribute that it's good. And there are many things you can say, and we've all had many different guests during quiet period. And they didn't reveal the numbers, but they gave you a sense of what's going on. Alex Karp is quiet period. He's reporting on Monday. And he just did this incredibly long interview with Sarah. And you can say, well, if he can talk like that and talk about broader themes of Palantir, then Jensen should be able to talk about it in a situation where obviously his stock has had a material move.
So you're saying this, the silence is deafening to
I think
you
silence
on
is
NVIDIA's
not
part. Now,
golden.
maybe Jensen Huang uses the appearance at the White House today. As I said, I mean, obviously in these circumstances, there are cameras there. We're going to have a stakeout camera. Right. And maybe he comes to the camera and he addresses some of the questions from our producer or reporter who might be on site. We'll have to wait and see. But you own the Amazons of the world that Jim wants to hear from, and you're going to hear next week from that company?
Yeah, I think they're going to spend more money. And by the way, Jim, OpenAI, the rumor is they're actually going to use Broadcom's custom.
Well, that's the custom chips, but Broadcom's going up.
Right, so they'll use both.
Well, and we know, by the way, that Amazon likes custom because it's cheaper.
That's right.
I know that Meta does everything because Hock Tan's on the board of Meta, and he's the CEO of.
Stop spending, though.
No,
you know what I mean?
No, but I'm just saying.
Maybe a little less than what they were going to, but I can't imagine that they would They have to keep up with the rest of the industry to be leaders.
Oh, they have to spend. I'm just saying, what happens if they're cagey?
Yeah.
Why don't they why don't they bargain to get the best price, even though they need everyone? I think NVIDIA is one of the best companies in the world. That's not changed. But I do say that this is a thicket. And I'd like to hear that even if Amazon walked away, we don't know. Remember the demand was insane and demand was crazy? I just want to hear that.
That's right. And that's what Jensen said.
I want to hear it again. Is that too bad? Is that too much to ask?
I think that was at the Communicopia conference out in San Francisco.
He does have a huge, he has this huge conference in March. But look, am I nervous? If you're not nervous and a stock has that kind of move, I don't know if you're a good manager.
And what do you make of the move from Jim to trim some of his position? Because he's admittedly a little nervous about where we are.
Remember, that's what we do.
But bear in mind, it's, you take NVIDIA, I don't have to tell you this, it's up threefold in 15 months. I'd be a fool not to.
Well,
give me a second here.
No, I'm saying this is why you're a manager.
Exactly, it's risk management. But can I just point something out that I think is important? NVIDIA, Microsoft, they don't exist in a vacuum. You started, Scott, your first question was, does the market have jitters? And I said only a sector does. Look, Microsoft, and I want your opinion on this, Microsoft and NVIDIA are down on the year. The market, the S&P 500 is up. Is it possible, Jimmy, that maybe the market broadening can happen without a disaster rate? Because everybody says that concentration of the top 10 names, it usually comes down with the market having a wipeout. Is it possible that maybe we get the broadening without an overall disaster?
I had an existential crisis this week. I said to my wife, I believe I missed a 10-bagger in Brinker, which is Chili's, because I've been so concerned about NVIDIA. And that makes me a manager who sucks. And she goes, I think that's a little too strong.
I think that's strong, too. I think it's too strong.
Well, like I said, it was existential for a second. But, you can't do it. You can't just say, I'm going to focus on NVIDIA, and I'm going to miss a 10-bagger because I'm a good manager. No, you're not. Can we hear what Jensen says? If he gets out and says, listen, this was a great meeting, and I'm allowed to sell everywhere. Because, Biden didn't speak to him. They limited the number of chips he could sell on a Saturday. I mean, I saw him the next day, saw him 2 days later. I said, wow, that was a bad conversation with the White House. There was no conversation with the White House. None. Well, what does he sell? Fossil fuels?
We'll see. It's a big deal.
He sells coal.
This event.
There are lots of questions circulating around NVIDIA in particular this week after the emergence of China's DeepSeek, including whether DeepSeek skirted U.S. export controls to get access to NVIDIA's chips, perhaps via third-party vendors in Singapore, say. For more, let's bring in Tae Kim. He's author of The NVIDIA Way and a tech writer at Barron's, along with our dear Jabosa. Tae, first of all, this book really shows you that NVIDIA, maybe I'm stating the obvious here, this company is no accident. I mean, the level in which Jensen Huang has had to go and reinvent it and shape its culture and drive it over the years is really incredible when you read about it. So I'm curious, first of all, if you have any insight on What may be taking place here with the DeepSeek emergence?
I mean, the funny thing is, Jensen said last year that we need to drive down the cost of computing. He specifically called out reasoning models and inference time scaling, which is exactly what DeepSeek innovated in the past few weeks. So Jensen almost kind of predicted this a few months ago. And he did that with Mellanox when he bought the networking company in 2019. When he actually bought that company, he put in the press release that someday AI workloads are going to work on these massive clusters and networking is going to be a critical component, which is exactly what's happening now with these 100,000 GPU clusters. So NVIDIA wants the cost of AI performance to be brought down, the cost to come down. Jensen has talked about AI inference. The cost has come down 1,000 times in the last 10 years, and they want that to happen over the next 10 years. And if DeepSeek's AI model optimizations actually are replicable by U.S. companies, this is exactly what NVIDIA wants.
But why do they want that? Just because, you'd argue, well, the more that you have to spend on these big workhorse models, the more that benefits NVIDIA.
So there's two components here on the AI training side and the AI inference side. Let's talk about the AI inference. So basically, these DeepSeek models do a mixture of experts, number precision. These are all techniques that have been used before, and they've kind of combined them in a very unique and innovative way. So the cost of inference have come down 90%. Now, if you think about it, the first blush, you react to that as thinking, oh my gosh, that's going to lead to a glut of AI computing power. Inference is serving the models. But actually, over time, computing history has shown when you get more computing power and put that into hands of developers, they figure out new applications, new workloads to use it. I mean, there's that saying, oh, you only need 640K of memory, and then obviously that proved false.
Right.
So over time, like researchers, we have healthcare, drug discovery, trillions of proteins that need to be simulated, robotics. There's these three mega trends that are happening this year right now: multimodal, where you analyze audio and video. There's AI agents. All these things are happening that are going to require more computing power. So if you have these algorithms and optimization techniques that give you more power, researchers and developers are going to find a way to use it.
Interesting.
And that's exactly what Jensen wants. And this is actually a very bullish thing for the whole AI data center space.
So that then brings us, Deirdre, to the question of what the U.S. should do about export controls on NVIDIA chips. Why don't you first bring us up to speed on what is the latest there?
So I think what Tay's getting at as well is Javin's paradox, right, which Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella brought up at the beginning of the week when all of this broke out into the open, saying more AI basically means more AI. And what Tay's talking about is true. At the inference level, it could require even more compute power. Something that I think may be lost in this conversation, though, is the competition that is going to be coming online for NVIDIA. Without a doubt, NVIDIA is leading edge. It has been the kingmaker in AI in that pre-training phase. In the inference phase, there's a lot more competitors. You have companies like Amazon and Google working on their own chips that are efficient, that could compete with NVIDIA's GPUs that are going to be coming online. And something that I think is really interesting that's also emerged this week is that big tech is just totally embracing DeepSeek. So while Washington is talking about more export controls to make sure that these GPUs don't get into the hands of Chinese labs like DeepSeek, it's obviously, proven this big breakthrough that our big tech companies are really excited about and integrating into their own platforms. I mean, Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS this week integrated DeepSeek in a way that isn't just taking DeepSeek, right, but taking the open source model and giving it to their customers in a safer way.
Yeah, Dell is doing the same thing. You can use it on Perplexity. So if you don't want to put it on your phone, you can still access it. So Tay, what do you think? I mean, if I could even put it that bluntly, the U.S. should do. You say you think the U.S. is still going to win the war here. As part of the war, should we be doing more serious export controls or not worrying so much about that?
I don't think you have to worry too much about it. There's no way they're going to. I highly doubt that the Trump administration is going to raise the compute thresholds to let China get the the current advanced chips. The reason why I think the U.S. is going to win is that the current Blackwell AI systems are these massive AI server racks with 72 GPUs, all tightly integrated together. They have over 100,000 parts. They weigh 1.5 tons. So in the past, a lot of this is backward looking. You could put like a small chip in your backpack and maybe smuggle it, but that's not
what I've heard. Yeah. So let me just interrupt you there so people know what we're saying. There's been a lot of speculation that these chips, these H800s or H100s, are being smuggled into China in suitcases. You say going forward that you can't even smuggle in the latest stuff.
Yeah, I mean, these AI servers that everyone's going to use because they're so much more performant and a massive computing density. Every hyperscaler is buying it right now. They're so big and massive, and you can't ship a 1.5 ton. It's like, come on, it's not going to happen. And these clusters, DeepSeek talked about 2,000 GPUs. The Llama 3 was trained on 16,000 GPUs. Now Llama 4 is going to be over 100,000 GPUs, and then Meta and everyone else is building 1 million GPU clusters. Like these are massive clusters and performance power that China is not going to be able to get. China's not going to be able to get a million GPUs.
And I apologize for running short on time here. Could you still, ship them to Singapore, quote unquote, and they make their way to China?
Not like these racks are so big and weigh so much. I don't think these things are going to be able to be smuggled in any shape or fashion.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And as you say, if all this raises demand for this computing power, we have it, and it will maybe be harder for it to kind of get there in the black market. It's we'll see. We'll see for sure. And I appreciate.
Tom, I don't know if you heard our segment on NVIDIA. You don't need to comment on NVIDIA necessarily, but can you tell us how important is NVIDIA to the macro stock market?
Well, NVIDIA is the leading company in the story of AI, so it is a very important franchise. It's a company that the actual lead in terms of developing the best chips continues to be far ahead of anyone else. If there is a change and a fork in the way AI moves forward or the focus becomes more on applications, I don't think it makes NVIDIA any less important, but it does create more upside. AI is a sort of a multi-decade story, and I'm sure there's going to be many story threads throughout that. So I think that the sell-off on Monday was a panic for NVIDIA, but we had highlighted to our clients that it was the 9th worst single-day decline. But the 3 times NVIDIA declined worse when we were not in a broad market, bear market, that was a bottom tick for NVIDIA. And I think that was probably the case Monday.
NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang at the White House today. What are we learning here, Seema?
Scott, we've also learned, according to a source, that in addition to meeting President Trump, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang also meeting with Commerce Secretary nominee Howard Lutnick at the White House, where he's discussing China restrictions and ways to revamp the CHIPS Act, which is seen as key to our country's national security. Now, Trump, we know, has been meeting with a number of tech CEOs in recent weeks, but it is the first one-on-one meeting with Jensen Huang since Trump took office. We're told Huang is keen to discuss the new chip licensing requirements that were unveiled by the Biden administration that would severely impact shipments of graphic processing units to a long list of countries, including countries like Israel, which is considered a U.S. ally. Trump does have the power to reverse this ruling. The question on Wall Street is, can Huang convince Trump to do so? We know DeepSeek is expected at least to be a part of the discussion between Trump and Huang and how it informs U.S. policy on artificial intelligence as the White House tries to figure out what type of restrictions and export controls on China would be most effective. Scott.
All right, we'll see how all of that transpires, too. A few weeks away from earnings, quiet period, not much they can say. And to some, that has been a little unsettling, giving all this important news this week. Seema, thanks. Seema.
Everyone's gunning for NVIDIA now, and why not? It's the king of artificial intelligence. It can charge a fortune for its chips because they're the only game in town. To get the most out of them, companies need to buy tens of thousands of chips. Long live the king. This week, however, we learned that maybe, just maybe, we don't need to buy as many of those chips as we thought. A Chinese outfit called DeepSeek has purportedly figured out a way to get much more out of NVIDIA's cheaper, lower-end chips, which makes you wonder, why should anybody buy the most expensive ones? Instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars on hardware to build and train an AI model, DeepSeek claims it only spent $6 million and got something almost as good, if not better. AI for the masses. Now, if you're like me, you found all this DeepSeek chatter unsettling. So let's analogize. Let's say we were talking about oranges and orange juice. That's a simple concept. Suppose you want to make orange juice with the most expensive juicer on the market, the OpenAI juicer. It can make 1 glass of OJ from 1 orange, with an NVIDIA GPU being the orange in this analogy. But DeepSeek, well, that's like a brand new juicer that can get 10 glasses of OJ out of the same 1 NVIDIA orange. Now, if that's the case, then you obviously don't need to buy as many oranges. You can cut your order by 9/10 and still get all the OJ you need. Yeah, instead of buying 10 NVIDIA chips, you can buy 1 and use DeepSeek, allegedly, to get the same amount of compute and intelligence. Yeah, I stuck in a critical adverb there, didn't I? Allegedly. So this declaration by DeepSeek rocked our world this week. We took it as gospel that DeepSeek, spawned by a Chinese hedge fund, has ended NVIDIA's ability to charge high prices. And if that's the case, you have to expect that the company will cut prices because its customers won't need as many chips as they did before, when demand was the same. If prices are indeed coming down, then so are the earnings estimates, which means NVIDIA stock is too high and therefore must be sold. Right, all very logical. So naturally, the stock got pulverized. Made much worse, by the way, that most stocks, because there's so many one-day gamblers who like to play NVIDIA like it's a roulette wheel. I mean, it's incredible how much this stock is what we used to call footballed. But not everything that's logical is true. What if the Chinese hedge fund isn't giving us the full story? What if the reality is totally different? What if DeepSeek spent a lot more on its hardware than the $6 billion that they're reporting? What if they didn't get 10 glasses of OJ out of 1 orange, but actually just bought 10 oranges? And that's what an article in a known authority called SemiAnalysis said today. This publication, which has covered DeepSeek for longer than most people knew it existed, speculates that the $6 billion cost is highly misleading. They say DeepSeek's real hardware spending, all in, could be more than $1.6 billion. I wonder if the PRC is subsidizing them. So if you sold NVIDIA on the DeepSeek revelations, and now you're finding out that it might not be the real story, perhaps it was a huge mistake. Makes sense to me. If there were really a way for businesses to save a fortune on GPUs for AI, then you'd have to believe virtually everyone in tech is a complete moron, and that seems unlikely. Well, consider this. We learned in the last few weeks that Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, and Larry Ellison, chairman and CTO of Oracle, are all paying full price for the chips from NVIDIA. Now, maybe all 3 are knuckleheads, or maybe there's so much demand that they simply don't have a choice. You have to believe that before they laid out the billions, they did their due diligence, which has to include the DeepSeek software story that supposedly lets you do more with less. It's not like DeepSeek was a secret. It just got a lot more attention this week. I am sure they knew everything that was in that SemiAnalysis piece and still went forward and paid full price. So is DeepSeek in an alternate universe that bodes terribly for NVIDIA's pricing down the road? Hey, anything's possible. But if you had to design the most punitive way to bring down the price of this great stock, you'd invent something like DeepSeek. I think the SemiAnalysis piece is spot on. It may just be one more long knife aimed at NVIDIA and nothing more. Maybe it's not so great to be the king after all.
All right, I hope you're all doing well today and staying calm in this market. The S&P finished the day 0.5% lower, and NVIDIA finished the day nearly 3.7% lower. Earlier today, not much was happening in the market, and there were rumors circulating that the administration would possibly delay tariffs to March 1st. Then this afternoon, the White House press secretary said that those claims were false, and that tariffs would be implemented tomorrow, February 1st, and that sent stocks noticeably lower this afternoon. We have yet to get specific details on what tariffs on AI chips may look like in the future. There are no tariffs on AI chips planned for tomorrow, but the president did say that there will eventually be tariffs placed on chips. As was mentioned in many of the clips you just watched, Jensen Huang visited the White House today to speak with President Trump, and no doubt tariffs came up in the discussion. Here is what the president had to say about the meeting with Jensen.
I ask you about your meeting with NVIDIA. What did you talk about, and do you think you need to ban more of the chips that they're selling to China?
Well, he's a great gentleman, and I hadn't met him. He's the biggest in the world in terms of chips, and I can't say what's going to happen with it. We had a meeting. It was a good meeting. But eventually we're going to put tariffs on chips. We're going to put tariffs on oil and gas. That'll happen fairly soon. I think around the 18th of February. And we're going to put a lot of tariffs on steel.
All right, so it appears that there will be tariffs on chips at some point in the future. Now the question is how much the tariffs will be, and will there be any exceptions to the tariffs? I think NVIDIA will be fine in the long term, whether there are tariffs or not. Just be prepared in the days ahead, because when the news breaks and we find out the specific details of these chip tariffs, that may put some short-term pressure on NVIDIA stock. All right, now I want to mention DeepSeek, because if you've been watching the videos I've posted this week, you know that I have been very skeptical regarding some of the claims made about DeepSeek. I've been saying that I seriously doubt that a team produced an LLM comparable to the top LLMs in the US with only a $6 million budget and old NVIDIA hardware. I've been saying all week that I think DeepSeek had a much larger budget than $6 million, and that they likely have tens of thousands of NVIDIA H100s. And today I feel even more confident in saying that. Today, President Trump's AI and crypto czar David Sachs hosted on X highlighting a new report from analyst Dylan Patel. According to the report, the $6 million budget number is misleading as it excludes CapEx and research and development costs. According to Patel's analysis, DeepSeek's total server CapEx was actually $1.6 billion, and they believe that DeepSeek has about 50,000 NVIDIA Hopper GPUs. Some of those are H100s, some are H800s, and some are H20s. As I said in the videos I posted earlier this week, if DeepSeek has a substantial number of NVIDIA H100s, which I think they do, then that would mean that the sell-off in NVIDIA stock this week was completely unjustified. And Dylan seems to agree with this, as he says that this obsessive hype around DeepSeek being bad for NVIDIA does not reflect reality, and that the reality is that these models are actually inducing demand for NVIDIA's products rather than diminishing it. In the long run, I think DeepSeek will actually be a good thing for NVIDIA and the overall AI thesis. There continues to be growing demand for more compute, and NVIDIA stands ready to capitalize on that demand. I don't know what the future holds, and we very well may experience some volatility in the short term as we get news about tariffs, and as more people become aware of what's actually going on with DeepSeek. Long term, though, I still think things are looking good for NVIDIA over the coming years. I'm very optimistic as Blackwell ramps in volume, and I'm looking forward to NVIDIA earnings on February 26th, as well as NVIDIA's GTC March 17th through the 21st. I really do think that GTC will be more of a market-moving event than CES was. CES was geared mainly toward consumers, whereas GTC is where we are likely to get news about NVIDIA's products in the data center, which is where NVIDIA makes the majority of their revenue. We may learn more about Rubin, and we may even learn about the next generation after Rubin. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day and a great weekend, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.